Well, the Asian markets, they have started the day on a mixed note as investors watch out for developments on the U.S. China trade situation as negotiations are set to continue in Beijing later this week. The Kospi has opened up with a cut-off around 0.2%. Remember, all eyes on the Chinese as well as on the Hang Seng. Some of those markets are opening up after a few days, so we'll be waiting by for rates out there. But the Kospi is lower. Pull up the other couple of markets as well. It's a bit of a mixed start to kickstart trade. You have the Straits that's down close on 0.4%. And the Taiwanese index, that's opened up with a gain of around 1.2%. What does this all mean for the SGX Nifty? Remember, in Friday's trading session, we ended virtually at the low point of the day. There was a lot of selling towards the end of the week. The SGX Nifty is suggesting a 20 to 25 point downtick. Let's see how things shape up in the next couple of hours.
But let's talk about U.S. markets then, where stocks bounced off intraday lows to close mostly higher on Friday as late afternoon buying offset pressure from lingering fears over U.S. China trade tensions. The Dow Jones that bucked the trend to finish the session weak but posted weekly gains, extending its winning streak for a 7th week. The S&P 500 eked out small gains while the Nasdaq ended 10 points higher. CNBC's Eric Shemi gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. stocks ending the day mixed, with Dow off 63 points, the S&P flat, and the Nasdaq up 9. Amazon is reportedly reconsidering its decision to build one of its new headquarters in New York City following local opposition, according to the Washington Post. Amazon's plans for the area have come under increased scrutiny by local lawmakers and advocates, despite the company's promise to bring 25,000 jobs to the area. Meanwhile, shares of Hasbro tanking 10% as the company's profit was hit harder than expected by the Toys R Us liquidation. Hasbro and rival toy maker Mattel had to scramble to find new retail space for their products after Toys R Us declared bankruptcy last year. Sales fell 2% in the toy industry as manufacturers endured their first holiday season without Toys R Us in more than 60 years. And the FDA is ramping up its pressure on Juul in light of Altria's $12.8 billion investment in the e-cigarette company. FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb calling executives to the agency's headquarters to explain their strategy, telling CNBC he's concerned over whether Juul is truly committed to reducing teen vaping. That's the action from the U.S. market. Back to you in Mumbai.
Here is some opinion from market experts on the U.S. market and the Fed's rate trajectory.
We think January's rally was really just an unwind of the extreme pessimism from December, and so it was very, very much justified. The economy slowing and not stalling, trade tensions are slowly diminishing at the margin, and the Fed is on pause. All right, but now we know, right? We've unwound that extreme pessimism. Now the bar is substantially higher, and the market is very, very sensitive to any sort of confirmation of this base case. I think this week, honestly, we didn't get too much new information. We got some rumblings around trade, but not too much, frankly. I think the most important thing will be the continuation of the trade talks ongoing next week, as we know. And next week, I'm also watching the inflation data for a confirmation of that Fed pause. So I think it's a little bit harder. It's a higher bar now.
We've gotten the Fed put that the markets had asked for and the markets had wanted. So I think the Fed, our view at Eastspring is that the Fed could stay on hold for quite some time. Maybe, and again, depending on very data dependent, is that we get maybe a hike in June and then one in December. But, the risk to our view is that there's only one hike or maybe no hikes for the rest of the year. But at least our view is that we still get at least one hike because the U.S. economy is still doing okay, especially on the consumer side, which comprises 2/3 of the economy. So if 2/3 of the economy is still doing well, then the Fed can still hike in the coming months, but it's just not urgent anymore. And as they've said over and over again, they could afford to be patient. The stark decline that we saw in the stock market at the end of the year, I think, was an indication of its repricing earnings. So 2018 had really strong earnings, double-digit earnings growth, and then heading into 2019, I think they were repricing for something into the high single digits. So high single digits for the U.S. is still good, but at the same time, it's just not what we saw in 2018. And obviously, 2018 had the boost from the tax reforms and the tax cuts. So that obviously was a big push for earnings.
Well, let's find out how the European markets closed on Friday. Most of them, they closed lower. Fears over the U.S. China trade tensions, as well as slowing economic growth, that's what's plaguing that market. And all the three frontliners, they ended in the red in Friday's trading session. In fact, we had the DAX that was down close to 100% in Friday's trade.
Dear viewers, the new rules for DTH on cable have come into effect from February 1st. To keep watching India's #1 English business news channel, CNBC TV 18, just call your cable or DTH operator and ask for CNBC TV 18, only for ₹4 per month.